Bill Fordy took the helm as the 10th chief of the Niagara Regional Police Force earlier this month. And Bill, welcome to the program. First time I'm having a chance to meet you. It's a heck of a lot of responsibility, 1,100 employees with the police service.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. And yes, it's a significant role with, working with, great people doing important work. So I'm very excited to assume the responsibilities.
You had a chance for the last 6 years or so to, I guess, shadow Brian McCullough, and now you're stepping into his shoes. What did you learn over those 6 years about this force?
I think first and foremost is as you move across, the country from organization to organization, the shoulder patches are different, but the people are the same. So I think one of the things that was really clear to me is we have really good people here. They really care about the community. We've got significant community support. We've got great relationships, and there's a really solid foundation for me to build upon the work that Brian or Chief McCullough did when he was in that capacity, in that role.
Take me through your life as a police officer. So when you were, I guess, in high school, when you were here, you grew up in Ontario or you grew up in BC?
I grew up in Ontario, and in my previous life I was a hockey player. So when I finished...
At what level? Tell me.
I played, I was drafted to play in the NHL, and I played in the minors. I played junior hockey in Guelph in the OHL.
And then some AHL or East Coast hockey?
IHL, International Hockey League, yeah. So then after I was done playing hockey, I went to school, and then I joined the RCMP. I was posted to Surrey, British Columbia, and I started in patrol or frontline response. I then worked in a burglary unit. I worked in a unit investigating sexual offenses, robbery, homicide. I then transferred, I was promoted to Burnaby Detachment, which is the second largest RCMP detachment in British Columbia, and I was in charge of their homicide unit. I then worked there for a couple of years, and then I was promoted again. I worked as a polygraph examiner, administering polygraph exams to people for, things like homicide, sexual offenses, etc. And then during that time, I was part of building an interview team or an interrogation team to help provide guidance or support to units conducting high-profile or high-risk investigations. I did that for 5 or 6 years. And during those years, the Integrated Homicide Team was created in the Lower Mainland of British Columbia to assume carriage of all the homicides in the Lower Mainland. And I was promoted to inspector. I had oversight of that unit for 5 or 6 years. I then went back to Surrey, ultimately became the chief there. I was in that chief's position for 4.5 years, and I was promoted again, or transferred again, to oversee the Lower Mainland District in its entirety. And it was while I was working there that I was recruited to come to Niagara here as the deputy chief.
Big difference between being with a national police force, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and with a local, I guess, regional force here?
Yeah, I think in British Columbia, the RCMP, the policing model is different across each province.
They do the same role that the NRP does here.
Yeah, they do municipal policing, they do the provincial policing, the OPP does, and then they do the federal policing. So there's three layers. In many respects, when I was the chief in Surrey, it wouldn't be uncommon for me to have the mayor at a press conference, to have a minister or the premier, and then to have the Minister of Public Safety. So dealing with all three levels of government at different times, because they all have a vested interest in what takes place in that municipality. And then, of course, coming here where, we have our police board and we deal with the elected officials, but the only time we really engage with the elected officials at the region is during the budget process.
Oh man, you had to bring up budget. Let's talk about budget.
Okay.
Because you talk about dealing with the region. I mean, that's always a sticking point at budget time for the region is the police budget, among other things as well. But 190.5 million, a lot of responsibility again, allocating where that money goes.
Yeah, 100%. And I give the regional councillors credit for doing their due diligence and expecting us to provide effective stewardship of the public monies. And we engage in a pretty rigorous process. As you know, this year the regional council asked us to come back and sharpen our pencils. We did that and went back, and we were able to demonstrate to them the value for their investment in us and an effective return on that investment. And certainly it's on me and the team that I work with to provide effective stewardship of those public monies, which we will do.
What do you see as some of the challenges facing the NRP in the next couple of years?
I think the region continues to grow, and one of the things that I've talked a fair bit about is, the nature of crime has changed from 15 or 20 years ago to now where it's much more transient. The crime doesn't know a boundary, doesn't know a clock. It's not uncommon for our investigators to be dealing with suspects from GTA or across the country
we've
or
seen
international.
Some violent crimes here that we're not used to seeing, but a lot of that does tend to seem to come from people from outside of Niagara.
That's correct. And we're seeing an increase in gun crime right across the country. And the source of those guns oftentimes is in the States.
And you've also talked about what you call ghost guns, these homemade guns. Hard to get a handle on the movement of those weapons.
Yeah, the privately made firearms, PMF, also known as a ghost gun, that's an emerging pressure that we're seeing in Ontario, we're seeing it in British Columbia, Calgary, Quebec, and if you go talk to our public safety partners or law enforcement agencies in the United States, it's a significant emerging issue.
Drugs, homelessness, those things complicate matters, tie up a lot of police resources from time to time as well.
Yeah, correct. And, one of the things that I hope we can continue to do is have effective working relationships to find a pathway forward where, we have experts dealing with the things that they're educated and trained in, and the police deal with matters related to crime. As you say, it's becoming a bigger pressure for the women and men working on the road, and ultimately we will be hoping and looking forward to working with partners to find more effective ways to get people the help they need so that the police ultimately don't have to engage with them.
The fentanyl crisis, something that police forces around the world are having a problem dealing with. And I understand there's even some new, strains or developments in fentanyl that make it even more powerful. It's one of those things that is such a challenge for police forces to deal with.
Yeah, I think over the last 10 or 12 years, I've really observed an increase in the impact that fentanyl's having. Of course, it started out west while I was there, and then we saw it move across the country to where it hit Ontario probably 4 or 5 years ago, like a freight train. And as you referenced, it continues to be a real challenge. And one of the approaches that we've taken that I'm a big fan of is a victim-centered approach. I'm trying to work with the families of people who have lost a loved one because they maybe intentionally or unintentionally ended up being subject of a fentanyl overdose.
As chief, you walk a fine line. You're dealing with your employees, you're dealing with the region, but your role also is to be out in the public and to be that face of the police force and attend events. Mm-hmm. I know very strong support from the NRP for local organizations such as Big Brothers and Big Sisters. What are some of those kinds of activities, those kinds of, charitable organizations that you really look forward to working with in the next few years?
Yeah, my hope is that we are able to continue to develop a foundation for the Niagara Regional Police. It's a undertaking that's been in process for a couple of years now. And once we have that solidified, we'll be able to support all those agencies that you reference. And me personally, I have a soft spot for anything involving children.
Right.
One initiative that I was a part of was Cops for Cancer. And, my hope is we get the foundation up and running and we're able to have a meaningful impact not only for the next 5 years, as you referenced, but in 20 years or 50 years, they're talking about the support that the NRP has provided for the community, and in particular, at-risk communities.
Police forces across North America have been under fire in recent years. A lot of, criticisms and things like that. How do you plan to deal with those kinds of things?
Mm-hmm. Well, my hope is that if and when we make a mistake, that we acknowledge our mistakes and we learn from them and we don't make the same mistakes. It's not lost on me that being a police officer is becoming more and more complex, more and more difficult, and the expectations on our people continues to increase. But I have to say, the people that are becoming police officers now, they're better than when I joined. They're more educated, They're more alive to social issues. They come from more diverse backgrounds. So I really think that we're well positioned to continue to be on the front line. You know, if I can frame it up, you know, be on the leading edge of trying to make our communities better. We're going to make mistakes. We're not going to make everybody happy, but you know, we'll take accountability, you know, when we need to, and we'll learn from those mistakes and continue to move forward.
Bill, Chief Fordy, thanks for coming in and talking about
Thank you for
this.
having me. Thanks.